Welcome to the Forever Classic Podcast, the show that seeks enlightenments through video games, films, and other geek culture. I'm Alex McCumbers. Today, I've got my buddies, my pals. I got Zach and Joe. Zach and Joe, everybody.
Zach is old.
I drank yesterday. Why is this still affecting speech patterns? Anywho.
I mean, I know I've been here for one episode, but I figure 3-letter names are long enough to
I don't make promises
right.
that I know I can't keep. So here we are.
So at work, I have there's me, Zach, there's Jacqueline, and there's Jake. So I just constantly get called Jack.
Oh, no.
That sounds like a mess.
Yeah.
Whoever is in charge of, I feel like there's some hiring bias happening.
I mean, the oddball name is Erin, so she never gets called the wrong name, but...
So how have you guys been? What's been happening?
Just had our buddy Tanner down here for the weekend. That was real fun.
What a great fucking guy, that Tanner fella.
Yeah, so he hung out with us, and we showed him around. We hit up one of the bars. We had a new food truck that was not at my food truck standard, so we were a little disappointed by that, but it was interesting.
Not bad, but not great, huh?
Yeah, it was a $12 bowl of food that didn't make me as happy as I wanted it to, but it was still okay. The lamb was really good.
Joe, what you been into, man?
I had actually a pretty fantastic week.
Yeah.
I have a potential lead on a project with a client that I have been trying to work with for 5 years.
Nice.
And so that is exciting. More details on that when I'm maybe more allowed to talk about it. I don't know exactly nothing's confirmed. It's just they approached me and asked for rates, and that's it so far. But fingers crossed, that would be awesome to work with them. The other things that happened is I got my first payout on Twitch this last week. So that was pretty cool. I've earned affiliate last February, and so slowly over the past year, it's accumulated, and I got enough for the first payout. So that was pretty exciting. And I released a new episode of Daddy Gamer this morning.
Watched it this morning. It was pretty great, actually.
Actually? Wow, rude.
Just in general, sometimes I watch things and I go, fine. But this time I was like, yeah, that's pretty good.
It's true. I'm not really a filmmaker, so that has a lot to do with it. I'm definitely an animator and motion graphics artist by trade. When I work with shooting video myself on with my own cameras and stuff, it gets a little bit amateur in that regard. But usually my editing and my animation and graphics and stuff are pretty solid.
I would be proud of this one, man. This one was pretty good. And you did it on Untitled Goose Game.
Yes. So basically, the concept of the script was to talk about what game our family enjoyed the most. Kind of taking from that dad angle. Like, I have my personal favorite game of the year, which is Disco Elysium. But that doesn't necessarily mean it was my family's game of the year. And so that's what I decided to talk about. And it was easily Untitled Goose Game. Anytime that game was on screen, everyone was smiling and having a good time. Whether it was just the game itself or watching my daughter play it.
Right.
And so that was kind of the inspiration about it. And I was like, it's kind of thematically appropriate that Untitled Goose Game is when I start thinking about games for the whole family is the one that steals the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, throughout the video, my daughter is the goose and pulls pranks on me throughout the whole thing. And they're
pretty cute. And you got some good shots of her too. Like she's got some good child acting there in this one.
Yeah, that's been a fun thing about the show is that watching her grow and her ability to take direction and more complicated directions and things like that. There was even one, I don't remember exactly which one it was, but I gave 3 or 4 steps that needed to be done. And my wife was like, wow, that's actually a really complicated, are you sure she's going to be able to do it? And it wasn't any problems at all. And so I was pretty proud of her.
Very cool, very cool. So I have been just kind of hanging out in general. I had some friends over yesterday and we played a lot of games. That was actually really fun because we started with Mario Kart, ended up going to Smash Brothers. We played 5 or 6 games. But the one that we actually had the most fun with was ARMS. And that's weird to me because that game was well made and I liked it well enough, but nobody ever talks about it, right? And so ARMS was that one where you have characters with punches on a cabling spring for the main character or ramen for another character. And so it's kind of like a third-person shooter in a way, but it's a fighting game. And so it's really well made, really well balanced, and we had just a grand old time playing. It was very funny.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes me think about that game again and how good it was. And I just kind of want Nintendo to do a sequel or something to ARMS and just really kind of run with it.
My only exposure to that game was attending PAX waiting in line to play Monster Hunter World before it released. Across the aisle was the Nintendo booth, and they were hosting an ARMS tournament.
Oh, I watched the replay to that.
Anyone who could survive 10 rounds in a row won some like pretty cool swag, and there was one guy that was like really going for it. And so we were like, everyone in line was like really invested in seeing this one guy actually, because we all wanted to see what he was going to get.
Yeah.
And so when we turned the corner and lost our view of it, we were still like leaning and trying to like see what was happening. And he ended up doing it, but we were too far around the corner to see what he won.
That's super cool.
Oh no. Isn't that the one that you said the one of the devs played and was pulling out a bunch of moves that nobody knew what the fuck was going on?
Yeah, that was either E3 or PAX or one of the major conventions. But they had that and a Splatoon tournament and a Pokken tournament that year that were like all really fun to watch. So guys, it has been, depending on your angle, kind of a sad news week in the gaming world. The main thing that a lot of people have been talking about is there have been delay after delay after delay. All the like AAA games basically got moved back a few months.
Yeah, I think the main theory that I've seen that makes the most logical sense is all of these big games are actually not necessarily fleeing, or like they're like trying to avoid competition with Animal Crossing, which is really the heavy hitter in March. And so if
Animal Crossing is going to be the best.
If they just wait a couple months, they can give everyone a chance to get their Animal Crossing out of the way, and then they can get into their Cyberpunk.
I'm going to hit you with one that's infinitely better in March that is 9 times more graphic. Doom Eternal is coming in March, and a new trailer dropped, and it looks freaking great.
Yeah, I'm probably more likely to play that one.
Yeah, I definitely want to get it. But the other major game, at least for me, that got pushed back was Final Fantasy VII Remake. Was pushed back a month. It's now coming out April 10th.
I want to know if you've played any of the old Nintendo games via the Switch, and if you've found Mario difficult to play using the Joy-Cons, or if I'm just really bad.
No, you're right. It's the Joy-Cons are kind of awful when you're playing retro games. Try like the Pro controller, or if you can get a hold of the SNES Pro 30 by 8-Bit Do. That's a great controller to use for retro things on the Switch. But no, it's not just you. They play weird on the Joy-Con.
Yeah, I was sliding like right into every hole, like straight down.
That's why I really like playing on my little Super Nintendo Classic Edition.
Yeah.
Those controllers are spot-on recreations.
I mean, you can order SNES controllers for the Switch, but everybody seems to recommend the ones that 8-Bit Do makes, because they are just quality. And they have thumbsticks and stuff, too, so you can use them to play anything. Another title that was delayed was Iron Man VR, which is one I was kind of looking forward to, but wasn't necessarily planning on buying. That's now coming out on May 15th, and so that's actually being pushed as a pretty high-budget PSVR title, and I'm excited to see where that one goes in particular.
Is it gonna be better than Half-Life Alyx?
I don't think so. I think Half-Life Alyx is gonna blow a lot of VR out of the water. Personally, that's my dark horse call currently, which should also be coming in March.
Now, is Half-Life Alyx gonna be better than Beat Saber?
Now that's something, because Beat Saber is not only moddable on things other than PSVR, but like that has quite the following.
Well, yeah, there's no more Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
And Dance Dance is like not really a thing anymore, so you just get some cool stuff.
Dude, Rock Band taught me how to play drums. No lie. If you set Rock Band to expert, you will learn basic beats, and you can use that to like branch into other things on the drums. It's actually a really helpful teaching tool for that instrument.
I absolutely believe it, because BJ played the shit out of them all the time.
Yeah. Speaking of Marvel, Marvel's Avengers is now slated for September.
It's true.
Are you guys even into Avengers? Like, what's your take on that?
From what I've seen, it looks interesting. Like, I'm definitely down to playing a good superhero game. I think that the PS4 Spider-Man game kind of set a high bar for how superhero games are supposed to feel. Like, there's a certain feeling you're supposed to, like, experience when playing a superhero game. And they're going to have to, like, they're doing more than just one superhero. They're doing a whole team. They're going to have to really do a good job nailing how each hero feels different from each other, and really like capturing that feeling of being the Hulk or being Black Widow are going to be really crucial to the success of that game. Initial reactions to like the art style or the art direction for the character designs was a little like not what I was expecting. I would have expected a little bit more of a comic book direction of it than kind of the Uncanny Valley realism approach.
The realism will
especially
definitely not age well.
Especially with we have actors that have pretty established looks right now into how everyone thinks that these characters look right now. And so people are going to pick up the Avengers game and they're going to be like, that looks nothing like Scarlett Johansson, that looks nothing like Robert Downey Jr., and they might be confused and return the game. But yeah, I definitely think its success is going to hinge on if they can capture that feeling of being those individual heroes. Spider-Man had the benefit of being one hero and then the side missions with the other characters, but for the most part it was nailing feeling like Spider-Man, and it did a great job.
Now, the thing that interests me in this particular title is that they are using Marvel's Avengers, and the Spider-Man game was called Marvel's Spider-Man. So I think maybe the same people that are like pushing the video game initiative might be involved, even though it's two different development companies. And the other thing is, whenever we were at PAX West, I didn't get to play this demo, but my friends at the Another Gaming Retro podcast, both David and Robert, did get to play some of the Avengers, I believe. And I know Robert was like super impressed with it. He was like, I was completely surprised with how it played, and so it's actually one of his more anticipated games now. So because of Robert's specific experience with it, I'm like more interested now than I was before.
I'm not overly interested, honestly.
Supposedly it's gonna have some Destiny loops, so I kind of want to get your hands on it just for that.
Okay, I mean, no, I'm willing to try anything and check it out, and like, it's just not one of the things that I'm like hyped about.
Yeah. Also in September, we will now see Cyberpunk 2077 instead of May. That actually makes a lot of sense to me. Like, all of these delays make sense because a lot of them seem like they're good, but a lot of AAA games have been releasing in kind of shaky grounds, whether it be bugs or stability issues. So I'm kind of glad this is being pushed into September, but Cyberpunk is probably the bigger one out of all of these.
Well, there was one thing that I saw brought up at one point where someone was reminding people, like, people were complaining about it on Reddit and things like that, and I saw a comment that posted an article from a few years ago when The Witcher 3 was coming out, and it also received like a 6-month delay towards the end of its development cycle. And so they're like, and you guys know how good that game turned out. And it probably wouldn't have been that good. Like, it still probably would have been pretty good, but it was even better because they took those extra 6 months to like really finesse it. Like, the game is probably done and playable right now, but they're going to spend the next 6 months, 6 to 9 months, just like finessing it and really just like making sure all the little things are in where they need to be.
At least you would think too, and presumably we're going to get the full PS5 release sometime in February or March. A lot of people are thinking sometime in February.
That sounds good. To me, this is a good move back for them because, of course, like they did with The Witcher, like Joe said, is awesome. And they did a lot of... There's so much little crap that they had to do in The Witcher 3. And with all the new tech, I can only imagine that there's even more piled into Cyberpunk. But at the same time, in my head, I'm going, it's the three big killers have pushed everything back. Final Fantasy, Doom, and Animal Crossing have just like started bullying everybody out of March.
Right. Yeah, and the one report that came out of this, and a lot of these initial breaks were done by Jason as well, I believe. But over on Kotaku, Jason Schreier put out a piece called Video Game Delays Cause More Crunch. Because a lot of people, myself included, when we first saw this story, was like, oh, cool, now they have more time, more leeway, they don't have to crunch as hard in that last week or two, right? But that's not necessarily the case, and that's kind of what Jason goes through in this article. I haven't read it word for word myself, I just skimmed it recently, but this is good reading. A lot of people have in the industry, including people like Greg Miller over at Kinda Funny, has specifically pointed to this article and say everybody interested in games should take the time to read this. So this article is available in our show notes, and I highly recommend checking it out because so many people are pointing to it, and I plan to sit down and actually like pick it apart and do some thinking on it as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because the idea is that, they're giving the team more time to work on it so they'll be able to work more comfortably when depending on the company, the reality might be they're literally extending the crunch time. Because you can handle 2 weeks of crunch time. Like, that happens with video and animation all the time, where you're just trying to get those last bits done before the deadline so that you're ready to go. But when your boss all right, now we're in crunch time for the next 6 months, that's when you start like, all right, I'm burning out. there's no way I'm going to make another video game in my entire life because this sucks.
Yeah. And crunch in particular has been shown time and time again to not necessarily be effective, but it is an area that definitely needs consideration, and the amount of time to sit down and consider those sort of things. It all comes down to good management, right? Any project that you're working on at the end of the day needs to have good management, whether it be timing, getting people in the right place, making sure people are on task, that type of stuff. So whenever we see video games fail in that, it usually comes down on the heads of the managers. And at a higher note, it'll also come down on like your investors pushing for that kind of stuff.
Well, let's compare these like delays to other companies that have like the one that stand out to me is Nintendo delays almost every game they make.
Yeah, at least once or twice.
They are consistently good games. Like
Nintendo has a different approach. Whenever they do it, they are doing it in a way, I think, that like gives them the space to work on it.
Yeah, they're literally extending the development cycle because they're realizing that at the pace they're going, they're not going to meet the deadline. Whereas other companies are just extending the crunch time. But Nintendo employees have a very high, like particularly for Japan, have a very high worker satisfaction. A lot of their employees stay for a long time because they're happy with where they work.
Yeah. And of course, there's that quote from an interview with Shigeru Miyamoto where he specifically said, a delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad. And that quote is kind of really circulated a lot when these things are shared. And so that philosophy is something that I'd like to see if that a company delays a project. Hopefully they're putting forward the time to make it that much better. But that new report says, depending on the situation, that could not always be the case.
Yeah, and you would think that these companies would take it. Nintendo is easily the most recognizable, most famous video game company in the world, and their strategy is consistently successful. You would think they would be a leading example of how to handle delaying a game, but it doesn't seem to be the case because I think Nintendo is different in that a lot of the higher ups are game devs themselves and listen to people like Miyamoto, who's not necessarily like a CEO, but he is a very respected member of their company.
That's the difference, is a lot of the leaders in Nintendo are those like high quality developers and programmers, right?
Yeah.
So it does make sense.
As an animator, there's definitely a different feeling to working for someone who is also an animator and who is not.
Oh yeah,
there's
for sure.
just that base level of understanding on how things work when you work with someone who already knows how it works. And so I think that's a big thing too, is I don't know what the corporate structure of Project Red is or Square Enix in how they handle those things. I don't know who's in charge. Like if EA was delaying this game, you can just assume it was so that they can cram more stuff in that wasn't originally going to be there because they wanted to add stuff that the game dev team didn't want to add, but then corporate was like, you have to add this, it's corporate policy. And so now the game is being delayed so they can add microtransactions or something, and that takes 6 months.
That definitely sounds like an EA move.
So who knows? Like, I don't know these companies' structure well enough, but those are like kind of the pendulum swing. You got Nintendo and EA on each end of this spectrum here, and in terms of how they handle big decisions about game release.
Now, people that I think are doing a great job both on the product release end, really making sure each of their games coming out are quality, is Capcom. And Capcom have recently announced, as of earlier today, I believe, that a new roadmap has been charted for Monster Hunter Iceborne. And I've got that roadmap here on the screen for you all. And for our listeners, we'll just kind of explain it. So this really charts out between now and the very end of May.
Oh, that's what you meant. I was very confused. I was like, roadmap?
Yeah, so a lot of these little events are things that we kind of expect from Monster Hunter. But right now, the PC releases of Monster Hunter, Iceborne just came out on Steam recently. And so all the updates that we've been getting, things like Rajang and Stygian Zenogre, Safajiva, all of these monsters are coming in chunks over time. And so, to me, the most interesting piece is that all of these updates will sync up at the very beginning of May.
Oh, does that mean we're going to get some crossplay?
That's what I'm thinking. So at the very beginning of May, we get title update syncs between PC, Xbox, PS4. And that also is the month that we get a fan favorite monster. Now, which monster do you want to come back?
A bug.
Ooh, the bug would be cool. I forget his name, but the one from Ultimate would be neat. Some of the beetles.
I would just say any bug. There's a huge lack of bugs in World, and I just want to fight a big bug.
Yeah. I
Um,
want Gore Magala from Ultimate 4, personally. I
That would
love
be a
Gore
good one.
Magala.
I'd be down for some Lagiacrus or even a Plesioth.
Oh, I hate Plesioth.
I know, but it's such a crazy, annoying fight, and I've had some of the most like harebrained fucking dives from Plesioth fights.
Now, I think an easy thing that they could do, but I don't think fans would react as well, is they could do Gamoth, the giant mammoth-looking monster, because it would fit so well in the Hoarfrost Reach.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Or what? There's that really gross one that has like a leech face and like crawls up on the walls and stuff.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Starts with a G.
I want to fight bugs and creepy monsters.
Giganox.
That sounds fun.
That's the name of it, Giganox. I hate this dude. This is my least favorite monster probably in the game. He is the worst. One of the most, like, disgusting monsters, period. And he's just annoying, and I hate him.
It's just so gross. I want to see it in world. I want to see it rendered in just full glory.
Ugh.
It's that I want that I want that HD leech face coming for me.
Now, after June, from the summertime onward, they have said in this roadmap that they are going to do new monsters and updates. So the updates for Monster Hunter World are not slowing down, and that's really cool. We're getting a bunch of, like, we're getting the Grand Appreciation Fest starting on the 24th of this month, and that'll include some of these, like, really cool Galaxy armor sets and, like, an alien kind of look for your Palico. So those will be really fun. It's kind of a celebration of 2 years since the game came out. 2 or 3. We're also getting 2 variant monsters in March for console players, and that could be anything like Stygian Zenogre is a variant, so we could get something like Furious Rajang or something, which would be cool. He looks like a Super Saiyan. Yeah, so this article is available now on Forever Classic Games. I got this information from a press release, and the other thing that I kind of want to see in Monster Hunter before the end of the year is a crossover with Godzilla vs. Kong, which has now been delayed to November. That could be cool. Even if it's something as stupid as, like, here's a special quest where you fight a Rajang and a Deviljho. Like, I would love some sort of acknowledgement of Godzilla in the Monster Hunter series again.
That would be pretty cool.
Zach, have you gotten to jump into Monster Hunter at all? Me and Joe just did a hunt or two.
I haven't got to play in a little while. Mostly, I just had too much stuff going on to do any, like, hefty gaming in a while. So Outer Wilds was the big thing, and then I got into getting into Shovel Knight. I started relaxing with some 7 days here and there. I'm working on picking it all back up to start playing a lot more again.
Yeah, if that crossplay becomes a thing, I can see myself playing a lot more, because I'll use the, like, higher resolution that I can get on the PC and stuff. Other than Monster Hunter, elsewhere in games news, which is also an expansion, we have... No, not the R4 website. That's for a flashcard. We have The Surge 2, which is a Souls-like game from Deck 13 that was published by Focus Home Interactive, which those folks put out a lot of games that are, like, great ideas, but not quite hit the mark, so to speak. They're the ones that did that vampire game, and they did that other pirate RPG recently, too. But, The Surge 2 is one of their higher-rated titles. It's a Souls-like where you chop off limbs and stuff, very similar to The Surge, so they took that initial idea and just kind of ran with it. But we're now getting the Kraken expansion DLC, and so this came from a press release as well. We got it in our email address. And they also released the Surge 2 Premium Edition on all the platforms that it's available, so PC, PS4, Xbox. My problem with the Premium Edition release is it's more expensive than the base game, because the base game is $50, but the Premium Edition is like $65. And it is cheaper to buy that rather than all the DLCs individually. I just wish they would have bit the bullet and said, you know what, base game is cheaper now, it's $30, you can get all the things for $60. Would have been really cool. But this is neat because it has story DLC, and you fight like robot pirates.
I'm down for that.
Right? Like robot pirates. Cool as hell.
Yeah, they look creepy as shit. Let's
Right?
do it.
And this is a game that a lot of the, like, podcasts I listen to were specifically talking about whenever the, like, early builds were coming out, because a lot of folks that I listen to are big Souls-like fans, and they said that this one's pretty good. Nothing, like, ridiculously amazing like Bloodborne or something was, but good enough to, like, keep you kind of sated until we get something official from Software again. So yeah, The Surge 2. You guys have any experience with The Surge?
No.
I know the beginning, because I've seen the beginning cutscene pretty well. Here's something I bet you have some sort of experience with. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is now available.
I've been watching some people play it.
Yeah, what do you think?
It looks cool.
The way it looks, to me, the first thing I thought of was, what it looks like now, what Kakarot looks like, is how The Legend of Goku felt playing on the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, I like Legacy of Goku, right? The GBA ones?
Sorry. Yeah, Legacy of Goku series, this new game feels like a 3D, like fully fleshed out, realized version of that. And it just looks fun. Like, I think this is fine. Like, they've been focusing so much on like the kind of the MMO that they had, and then like the fighting games. I think they kind of like threw the story of Dragon Ball Z to the side, and now revisiting that, I think people are kind of like really digging this idea of digging back and playing through the Dragon Ball Z story again, because it hasn't been revisited in a while. If they had continued to do it in every single fighting game for all these years, I think people wouldn't care as much. But it's been a while, and now we have like literally like just a straight up single player RPG action game to like explore and experience the Dragon Ball Z universe.
It reminds me a little bit of what they did to the Naruto games, right? The Ultimate Ninja games. So they were these 3D kind of fighters, but it really was also this kind of action-packed way of retelling the story. And so Dragon Ball Z Kakarot really kind of captures that like open world exploring Dragon Ball. Like some scenes have been expanded. Because I was watching Afro Senju and some other guys stream on the Bandai channel whenever this game first came out. And that was something that they mentioned specifically. That's like, look, if you're already really familiar with Goku's story, there are little areas where it's expanded upon just a little bit. And you do get to play as other characters other than Goku. You can play as Gohan, at least. I know that.
Yeah, I was watching mostly somebody play as Gohan when I think I watched 2 different people play as Gohan for a little while.
Now, I wonder if any of the like movie content will be available. Like, my question at the time was, how far does this go? Does this go to Boo? Does it go beyond Boo? Like, where's the situation?
I don't know. I mean, I watched a little bit interested in how the game plays, but then I also got kind of bored because they've told the same sections of story over and over and over now.
Yeah, and it, like what Joe's saying too, it is a classic story, and it's been a while since we've seen it, and it's always kind of cool to see those like recreated in full 3D and like advancements of technology and whatever. So I don't know if I would be in the mood for it, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I think this is going to definitely be like one of those games where how the game plays is going to be pretty crucial in whether or not I eventually pick it up. So it might be a rental.
A rental would be a very, very good place, I think, for this. It seems like the more I read about it, that fans are into it and think it's pretty good, but most people that just are playing it like your typical reviewers are really highlighting the faults. So this seems like a really fan-driven title specifically. Do you guys like DBZ? I actually really like DBZ.
I have the first season on DVD, and I actually have the entire manga run of the original Dragon Ball.
Oh, nice. I read most of the Dragon Ball manga because a friend of mine had the like full collection of them, and so every now and again he'd loan me one.
I also have like 4 years worth of Shonen Jump magazines.
Yeah.
So I've got like a pretty good chunk of the Dragon Ball Z story from that.
I used to read a lot of Shonen Jump. That's how I got into shows like, well, I guess manga, it's not much of a show. Beat the Vandal Buster is something I really wish would come back. That is such a cool shonen. The idea is that you have a kid that like uses their souls to make weapons that are unique to them, and they like run around in a video game sense, like leveling up by fighting vandals and monsters and stuff.
It looks like they did a really fantastic job translating Akira Toriyama's style to 3D.
They're killing it. I mean, it's really hard to beat what Arc System Works did, right? But like, this is pretty good.
There's been a few Dragon Ball Z games though where I've looked at it, even like modern ones, current ones, where I'm just like, they went too far in I don't know in which direction, but it's not quite right. It doesn't feel like what I guess it's subjective, so there is that. But this looks really great, kind of like with what, it's more in line with how the Dragon Quest games have evolved over the years to really nail down that style. But so many different studios have done Dragon Ball Z games that it's kind of hit and miss depending on what studio will have it at the time.
In the exact opposite of that, I just wanted to highlight Jump Force. I think Jump Force doesn't do a great job of capturing the anime style, even though I think the style is kind of cool.
They tried to like give it some dynamic and depth lighting and extra texturing, which is not really kind of the style of the original anime. Also, they tried to match all of these different artists' styles into one style rather than keep them in their original.
Yeah, especially a character like Light Yagami just looks really out of place.
Yeah, I didn't even know who it was if it wasn't for the demon standing next to him.
Yeah, Ryuk. I don't know, Jump Force is one of those things I wanted it to be good, but I knew in my heart of hearts that it probably wasn't going to be.
Yeah, that's kind of how a lot of people felt, is from what I heard.
That said, if I found
Yeah.
it like a package that had all the DLC for $20, I'd probably buy it and play through it. That's how I do a lot of these anime fighters anymore. Just wait till all the goodies come out and then come back to it. Now, I like that some of the classic Jump characters, like the kid from Yu Yu Hakusho, are in there. That's really cool. And you get new characters like the Black Clover and My Hero Academia as well. It definitely felt like a bit of a celebration of Jump.
Well, it was supposed to be the Smash Brothers of shonen characters, and that's what fans were really excited about. It's just like they're bringing all of them together. It's supposed to be this celebration of...
Yeah, it was also the 50th anniversary of Shonen.
Yeah,
More
so it's
importantly,
really
we got a
being hyped
pretty
up.
good app for Shonen Jump. There's a cheap $2 a month app that you can get, and it's pretty great. I used it to read a lot of Demon Slayer.
That diorama would be pretty cool to get.
Yeah, I'd be into that. So, fighting games, characters, you mentioned it a second ago. Smash Brothers has some new news. Tell me about Byleth. Byleth? I don't know.
I
think it's
have not
Byleth.
played Fire Emblem Three Houses, so I know nothing about that character.
Zach, you got any thoughts on Byleth, just announced for Smash?
Byleth is
The main character for
Of
Three Houses.
Fire Emblem Three Houses.
Yeah.
right, and it can be male or female, correct?
Yes. Just like most of the other Fire Emblem characters in Smash.
Yeah, I don't know. I honestly have not kept up with Smash like at all.
So yeah, it seems like people. The thing that people were somewhat excited about was the costume choices did include the outfits of the three major houses that you could choose from.
Yeah, let me see if I
Some
can get a
people are
screenshot for that.
People were kind of excited about that, but even more so as costumes, they added Cuphead for your Mii characters, so you could be Cuphead, which was a pretty insane development.
To me, that's way cooler than the Byleth stuff. Some of the
Yeah,
extra
people were
costumes we
more
got for
excited
that are great.
Yeah, people were more excited about the costumes and the announcement of a second Fighter's Pass than they were about the actual character reveal.
It just feels weird, right? That this is how we end this Challenger Pack.
Yeah, so a lot of people were kind of thinking that it's Sakurai has always been a really huge Fire Emblem fan, and he's gone on record talking about how much he's enjoyed Three Houses. So I think in a little bit, at least from that point of view, including this character was a bit of a passion project for him.
I think right
I'm
now they're
fine
just
with
letting
that.
Sakurai do what he wants, and I'm cool with it. Like, I'm not upset that we get Byleth. I just wish it would have been a different character for the end of this Challenger Pack. I would have been much more okay with it coming as the first character in the next season.
It's also possible they couldn't start working on it until the game is out. And so the game's only been out for a few months.
That's
right?
true,
Or no?
yeah. Well, Three Houses came out over the summer, I think.
Yeah, so it's been like 4 or 5 months now since it came out.
Yeah, July.
So it's, at the time they might have been working on one character and decided to switch it out. I don't know.
It just doesn't feel as potent as some of the other characters, because we've gotten Banjo-Kazooie, which is really well received and super wanted through many, many years. And then we got Terry Bogard, which represented the SNK bit of Japanese game development history. So, I mean, I personally like Fire Emblem. I always have, but it bums me out a little bit. And it's interesting to see somebody had taken videos of the NYC Smash character directs in their office where people were watching it live and reacting to it. And the biggest reaction was Banjo-Kazooie. But, like, the weirdest reaction was Byleth, where everybody's like, oh, it's a Fire Emblem character. And then somebody in the front goes, Three Houses. And everybody around them just kind of, like, scatters and slowly walks away.
No.
So it definitely didn't hit very well with, I think, most... I hate to say most, but a huge section of the fan base.
So predictions for the next Fighter Pass, who do you think might be, or who would you like to if you were to pick?
Man, I want to see Geno. Geno's such a cool pick from the Super
a
Mario
good
RPG. That's a good one.
I've seen Shovel Knight thrown around a lot too.
I think rather than Shovel Knight, Shantae from Way Forward would be a pretty
That would
solid
be a good one.
choice.
I would find a way to put the Goose from Untitled Goose Game in Smash. I think it would just be hilarious. If not as a character, it would make a great assist trophy.
Yeah, that's what I was just getting ready to pin you with. Character? I don't think so. Assist trophy? Hilarious.
But if you could pull off the Goose as a character, oh, that would be fantastic.
Oh, you could do it.
Couldn't they? They have Mr. Game & Watch, and he just throws bacon and swings a hammer.
And they've got Duck Hunt.
I like Duck Hunt. That was a good addition. I have that amiibo.
I like Duck Hunt too. I'm just saying. Untitled Goose for Smash.
Part of me wants to see the Doomslayer, but it's also like a weird choice, right?
I mean, Bayonetta is in there already.
That's what everybody says. It's like, okay, well, Bayonetta's in there, so everything's off the table. Anything's
So is Solid
possible.
Snake. Those are both from more mature.
I mean, most of my
content.
childhood dream picks are in Smash now. I always wanted Simon Belmont and Banjo-Kazooie, and they're available.
Right, like what an environment in gaming that we live in when you have to kind of reach into the depths of your brain to pick a character that isn't already in the game.
I mean, I would definitely love to see some more Mega Man stuff come out, even if they drew off of something obscure like Tron, the girl that was like the
Tronbot.
antagonist, and yeah,
Yeah.
her in one of the big little Lego dude suits, like fighting.
The Surf Bots. That would be cool. Oh, here's the bit with the different house colors. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm glad that you can represent your favorite house in Smash Brothers eventually. That's a really good choice for the colors.
Another interesting choice could be just like a hunter for Monster Hunter.
Yeah, that's kind of what somebody pointed this out recently. They mentioned that in Smash Brothers 4, you do get me outfits for Monster Hunter, but you don't in this one, I think. And so the thought was, well, we have Rathalos. It would make sense for Monster Hunter to be added. And Monster Hunter is playable as a character in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, but that game didn't go over very well. So having Monster Hunter in Smash Brothers would just be really cool.
I would love for them to be able to let you edit your Monster Hunter to be just have the same stats, everybody has the same ones, but let you have the customized this is mine.
That would be cool if you got to pick not only different colors, but different armor sets. That would be neat. Because I mean, the Rathalos set, clearly, that is a really recognizable Monster Hunter aesthetic.
Yeah, it's pretty iconic.
Mm-hmm.
But it would also be cool to see stuff like even the base set that you get in the original Monster Hunter game, or the base adventurer set, I think would be really cool. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities with Monster Hunter. And Capcom is always a good pick, I think.
Another interesting addition, considering it's on the Switch now, Diablo 3.
Diablo 3 would be interesting. I also hate Blizzard. Yeah, I don't know. Overwatch is another one that, kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sticking to the Fire Emblem stuff, Tokyo Mirage Sessions, FE Encore, is now available on Switch. And this is an RPG that, a lot of people missed because it was initially on the Wii U. Have you guys heard of this at all?
Yes, I've heard of it. Not only was it on the Wii U, I thought it was a rhythm game.
Oh, interesting, because I've heard people say
I'm
other things.
not alone in that. A lot of people thought it was a rhythm game, not an RPG.
Yeah.
Because it kind of looks like the cover is like a pop star, and it says Encore, so it's like a music reference. So why would you assume that's a JRPG?
Now, you're not
experience?
super far from the truth on that, because I've seen bits and pieces of the game. I've not actually played it. I own it. I specifically set out the effort to find it on Wii U. I haven't played it yet, but I did buy it. It was one of the last rare games I picked up, I think, before I moved out to Alaska. But this game is weird, because it is kind of pulling on the whole idol presentation culture in Japan, but it's also a mixture, it definitely plays like a Persona, that style of JRPG combat, or like a Shin Megami Tensei, right? In the same kind of vein. But you're bringing on characters that are the spirits of Fire Emblem heroes. So that's where the Fire Emblem connection comes through. This is actually a crossover game between Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem.
Oh.
It's such a weird concept, but I've seen so many people over the last 2 or 3 years since the Wii U version came out recommend this as a sleeper hit. They're like, wow, I hope this comes to Switch because more people need to experience this. Now it's available. And there are some extra little goodies too. You get costumes for Persona 5 and 3 houses.
Oh, well, that's pretty sweet of them, actually.
So what's interesting is I'd probably still be more likely to pick up the Wii U version simply because it might be cheaper.
There you go. Yeah, I'm sure it's a $50 thing.
Still hooked up to the TV because I still play it regularly.
Yeah, so this is one that I would pick up, if I had gotten a review copy, I'd be all over this, right? Because I wouldn't have had to pay for it. But as somebody who just likes Fire Emblem, I'll probably get it eventually. I just don't think I'm going to get it anytime soon. Although right now is kind of a slow period in games, as far as some of the major things that I'm keeping an eye on.
Honestly, I'm kind of thankful for that for right now, because I'm playing Monster Hunter again after 3 months. I'm getting back into playing a couple other games that have been on my list for a while, and I'm kind of liking the lull in the release schedule.
March is when things get crazy. Now, here in the next day or two, we will
Not
have
for me.
Scale Boy coming out. Scale Boy comes out at the end of the month, and I'm looking forward to that in the indie space.
Yes, me too.
Speaking of smaller releases, this is one that I picked up from our friends at NIS America. So, there's a game series that's been out for a long time on Steam called La Mulana. La Mulana is basically an Indiana Jones style of Metroidvania adventure, and it's really got a cool set of characters. There's a lot of really neat platforming challenges in it. So this is one that I think a lot of people that enjoy the classic style of Castlevanias and such might want to keep an eye on, because it is coming soon, if not already. March 17th is when this hits all consoles, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. But these games are available for the cheap on Steam. So if you want to check them out, that's a great place to do it. But if you want like a physical edition on the new consoles with all the extra goodies and stuff, then this would be the release you want to pick up. Have you guys heard of La Mulana?
I've definitely heard of it. It's a logo that every time I see it, I recognize it. So it's got that going for it. But I've not really seen much about it.
It reminds me a lot of the game that we just recently covered, Sydney Hunter, as far as like the main character being like an Indiana Jones sort of ripoff. I like people adventuring in little British hats. That's a good thing for games. I hope we get more quality titles in that kind of design space.
That'd be very good.
That about does it for news, guys, unless you have something else.
No. I mean, on the note of Indiana Jones, I was thinking about Spelunky 2.
Whatever happened to Spelunky 2? It got delayed, I think.
I think. All I know is I really enjoyed watching Travis and Tanner play it.
Apparently, people are playing early builds. It's been delayed indefinitely to 2020 currently. But yeah, Spelunky is a title that a lot of people like, but I haven't spent a lot of time with it.
Elder Scrolls Online has a new expansion coming out.
Oh, okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the vampires.
A Greymore?
It's got some Skyrim stuff in it, doesn't it?
I'm not sure. I don't know anything about ESO.
I don't follow it. I just like to watch the cutscenes.
The Dark Heart of Skyrim cinematic. So there's that. Here, I'll add it to the...
Sure. Spelunky 2 is something that, like, this is the game that inspired so many developers. Like, a lot of the discussions that people are having of, like, oh, what's your favorite game of the decade? Spelunky comes up a lot.
All right. I added the link to... Yeah, so ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, Greymore, May 18th. Xbox One and PlayStation 4 and PC. Oh, wait, no. PC and Mac, May 18th. Xbox and PlayStation 4, June 2nd.
Interesting that they're staggering the release there.
I don't know if they've staggered them from before or if that's a recent thing.
I think they have.
Looking like it's going to add a gigantic new zone, Western Skyrim.
Yeah.
The Blackreach Cavern, new quest line with about 30 hours of adventuring, adding a new system feature with skill lines that will challenge players to travel beyond Western Skyrim and across Tamriel to recover lost artifacts. That could be interesting. That kind of reminds me of in Skyrim, my first playthrough, I've talked to the bard in the bar, and he was like, I went to bard school. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. And I went to bard school, and it was all like, we lost this legendary sword in the battle of this. So then I would go and investigate and then find that sword. I thought those were like the best quests in the entire game, and there's only like 4 of them. So I was kind of disappointed. But if there's more content like that coming, that could be really fun.
I have always liked the idea of Elder Scrolls Online because it explores all these other areas that we haven't got to in a long time, since like the days of Daggerfall and such, right? But my problem is it's an MMO space. You have all these dipshits running around town screaming about whatever they're selling, and it just breaks the, like, exploration for me altogether.
Well,
I've never liked
also,
MMOs for that reason.
My biggest problem with MMOs, and I experienced this in WoW, and I've experienced it in every other MMO I've tried, is suddenly I find myself as a legendary warrior picking some farmer's pumpkins. Why am I picking this farmer's pumpkins?
It's just, some of the busy work you have to do is really dumb. I hear from a lot of people that Final Fantasy XIV is one of the best MMO experiences, and I think I've mentioned before that if I were to pick up any MMO currently, it would be that one. But I don't like paying subscription services, and I don't like the fact that I have to play in a space with hundreds of players. If I could lock it out to just like 50 of us, that'd be fine.
The only MMO I've been able to play for any amount of time, and I've tried a few of them. I haven't tried Final Fantasy yet, but Knights of the Old Republic.
Okay, I was gonna say RuneScape.
Nope, that one's even worse than WoW.
Oh, it is, but I put the most time into it than anything.
There's also a new 12-player trial, Kyne's Aegis.
I take it that's like their raids or something.
Yeah, new world events, Harrow Storms, and there's new Delves, Public Dungeons, standalone quest, as well as a host of performance updates and quality of life improvements. So if you're an ESO fan, that looks like you got something to look forward to. I heard the last expansion did not go over well, so hopefully this fixes a lot of that and brings some players back.
Didn't they add dragons in the last one? Like, how do you mess up dragons?
I don't know exactly what it was, But I know that a friend of mine who played it quite a bit, it was like his go-to game.
It must be popular enough if people are like still making expansions for it.
He stopped playing it because everyone else he knew stopped playing it when the new expansion came out, and they just didn't like it. I'm wondering if it's like the game has gone on long enough where they're like if you're a new player, you'd probably enjoy it.
Right.
But for older players, they're just like, they made it too easy or whatever. I don't know.
That's the weird balance you got to strike, right? And that's how I feel even with things like Monster Hunter, like you got to hit ways to bring players that haven't played in a while into it, get them up to speed. And then you also got to be kind to like the people that have been doing it since day one, right? Like it's a weird balance sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a hard balance. I played ESO in the beginning for a while, but I just got really uninterested pretty quickly.
I played the beta and it was rough.
I imagine.
The beta was real rough. I did that too.
Oh, a new game came out last week that I played and really liked. Light Matter.
Oh, yeah, you reviewed that.
Yeah, I reviewed it for Mariners Rock, and it is kind of coming into that same puzzle platformer space that Portal is in, and I really liked it. It's got some really good puzzles that had me kind of scratching my head. It's got a good sense of kind of that same sarcastic, kind of bitter sense of humor that Portal has as well. And it even pokes fun at Portal a couple of times where you hear kind of this like this guy that's directing you through it mention Aperture Science a couple of times. And he's like kind of poking fun. And at one point you're walking through and you come across the little droids and a companion cube.
Oh, nice. That's in a... Yeah, here we go. There's a screenshot of it.
And so, like, it's kind of like... It's got a very self-aware sense of humor. My biggest thing is it's really short.
Right.
Either it's really short or I'm brilliant.
I'm gonna put dollars to donuts that it's a short game.
It's like three... Thanks. But it's like... So it's a bit on the short side. But it is really, really interesting. The art style is very, like... The whole thing is based around, like, light versus dark. You don't want to touch the shadows. And so the art style is really like high contrast between the light areas and the dark areas, so you know exactly where you can and cannot go.
Right.
And so that is like a really good choice that they made for that. The one thing I would have liked to have seen is a little bit more attention and detail in some of the texturing itself, not necessarily the lighting, but the texturing, just to add some like visual variety to what you're looking at, because it gets a little samey towards the end.
Gotcha.
But other than that, if you're looking for a quick short game that's got some really great puzzles in it and has a good sense of humor, made me laugh a couple of times, Light Matter.
Right on, man. Speaking of things on Marooners Rock, before we jump into our main topic of the day, I sat down and watched a film that was made by the same guys that did Your Name. And so this is an anime film called Weathering with You. The ending didn't quite stick for me, and I'm not even going to discuss it here because spoiler reasons,
so
clearly.
Beautiful.
It's very pretty. And I was watching in like a press copy, so I mean, the version that I was watching is less pretty than what people are going to see in theaters. I think in select theaters you can go watch it now. But this is a movie that I think anybody who has enjoyed this like era of really emotional, heartfelt anime films are going to enjoy, because this one in particular has a lot of really human elements to it. Because a lot of the beginning story is our main character running around as a homeless person in Japan. And some of the, like, trials that he faces during that time are just really... They have a lot of punch to them. And so that section in particular I really connected with. It's some of the later things in the film that I just didn't hit as hard. I didn't cry in this one.
Do you feel like it's an actual insight into homelessness in Japan? Or do you think it's just kind of a, like, very fictionalized version of events?
It doesn't seem fictionalized, because I've read a lot of reports and such whenever I was in the radio reporting business, right, for homelessness. And it seems like in this film it's depicted pretty spot on. Granted, I've never been homeless. I've never lived in a major city such as Tokyo or New York or something. I've been to major cities, and I've interacted with homeless a lot of times, right? But I've never been in that situation, so it might hit harder for somebody who has.
So living close to the Twin Cities and living in the Twin Cities for a long time, I did see homelessness and was fairly aware of it and seeing it. And so there, until you said that it was about that, I never really thought about how homelessness looks in other countries and cultures and what that kind of, how that reception is. That rain animation is so dang good.
Everything they do with water about this is beautiful.
Sorry, I'm watching the stream back, so I'm a couple seconds behind what is happening, but I just saw the shot of the rain splashing, and I was just like, oh, as an animator, that is like, I'm the kind of person that I went and saw a movie, and I think it was a Pixar movie, and before it there was the animated short, and it was about this bird on the beach.
Yeah. Oh, I love that one.
It made me cry because of how beautiful it was. Like the sand physics that they got for it, and the water physics, and like the detail and the feather work, like just tears came to my eyes because I understood the amount of work that went into all of that. I knew I was the only person in the theater crying at this bird learning how to fish, but
I remember that
It
one.
was
That
just
was like Sandpiper or something was what it was called.
right. And this, I feel like this movie might have a similar effect on me. If I went and saw it in theaters, I'd just be like, it happened during Spider-Verse 2 with just everything they did to push animation forward. Like,
Now you
there's
can go
just
see the subbed or the dubbed. I saw the subbed personally, so I can't really comment on what the dub is like. But the other
Well,
thing that this
like-
movie does that I think is really cool is it really shows how people's environments affect people. Because you have these situations, your main characters in this, she can change the weather. So it's been like really rainy in Tokyo and everybody's kind of depressed, but she has the ability to go to places and just spark up holes of sunshine and leave it there temporarily. And so you see people's moods just immediately flip when the sun shines out, right? And it kind of goes back into that depression whenever the rain comes back. So this film really plays with the idea of how the environment affects the person. Because you have that homelessness, you have the tough social situations the characters run into.
That. Being in Minnesota and you being in Alaska, I'm sure also kind of get this, but like the winter months where it just gets dark so soon and it's just kind of gray and white and snowy and cold for so long, you just kind of feel like, I don't know, it just gets to you.
It definitely, seasonal depression is something that should not be taken lightly. The last thing I want to mention about Weathering with You specifically is that this was Japan's selection for Best International Feature at the Academy Awards, and they've only done this one other time with an animated film, and that was Princess Mononoke. So Japan specifically has really backed this movie. It came out last summer. It's just now hitting international audiences.
Do you know what studio did it?
G-Kids are the folks that put it out.
I think they're the distributor, publisher, like producers or whatever.
Toho was also on that list for Japan for distributors, but it's the same director and art guy as Your Name. So Makoto Shinkai is the director, and Genki Kawamura is the producer. But my takeaway is I didn't cry in this one, and I did for Your Name, so take that how you will. But it's definitely a film that I would recommend people see if you're interested in these like heartfelt anime movies. In much larger industry news, friends, Sony has decided to not bring PlayStation to E3 once again. And that doesn't spell anything good, I think, for E3, because PlayStation has always been such a pivotal piece of E3. All of their announcements and stuff felt like events, especially when coupled with things that Xbox were doing or Nintendo. So I think that E3 is on the decline, and when pairing this with the leak of information that the ESA has had several different times, and just the, like, not great things around the ESA, I don't think E3 is much for this world. We might get 2 or 3 years and that's it.
Nintendo stopped leaning on E3 as heavily for their announcements and big things and more on their Nintendo Direct. So it's possible that this might create, so Xbox is still going to be a major presence, but PlayStation out of the way might open up the venue for more indie developers. Like they could create a massive space for people to come, like indie devs to come in and showcase games and get press access and stuff without the distraction of Sony being there.
The other problem there is they have such a high price for booths, no indie developer is going to be able to afford it.
If they were to create an indie space, lower the price for that space because you're not going to get as big of a space, might make it a little bit more accessible.
That's definitely one way to keep attendance up, I think.
Think about it this way too. Sony used to be a huge space. Now all that space is going to be empty. They need to fill it with something. They might be able to that real estate is now available, so making the overall price of that real estate should go down because there's so much available now. Yeah.
So this story comes initially from GameIndustry.biz. And they actually were told by PlayStation that they're not going to be there. And the quote from that is, after thorough evaluation, Sony International Entertainment has decided not to participate in 2020. We have great respect for the ESA and as an organization, but we do not feel the vision of E3 2020 is the right venue for what we are focused on this year. And they go on to say that they're going to build upon global event strategies in 2020 by participating in hundreds of events across the globe. So we might see PlayStation spread out a little further than usual. They go on to say, our focus is on making sure fans feel a part of the PlayStation family and have access to play their favorite stuff. We have a fantastic lineup of titles coming to PS4, and with the upcoming launch of PS5, we are truly looking forward to a year of celebration.
It's an interesting that's what their approach is this time around, because I know in the past, particularly, I remember back being hyped for PlayStation 3 and Wii, because they did these console announcements. That's where it was first playable to the public, so you were getting people's hands-on impressions of both those consoles.
Television broadcast, live streams, whole kit and caboodle.
Same with PS4. Like, that was where it was playable to the public, and you were getting a lot of journalists' first hands-on experience with the console and like comparing, like, oh, what we saw in that trailer was actually in game. And so, like, those first impressions are going to be, and this kind of maybe hints that they're going to do more of like they're going to do some sort of event, but it's going to be spread out more around the world. So, like, if you live near a major city, you know, go visit your local Best Buy for the next 2 weeks, because wait in line, because you'll be able to play one of the PS5s we've got stationed there.
That seems likely. With how successful just sharing things online via a self-produced video or a self-produced stream or something, I think that E3 is becoming more and more of an it's just not really necessary anymore, I don't think.
Nintendo has really paved the way with the directs.
Yeah, they really have.
It's literally putting the feed directly into fans' hands. Watching it on your phone, it makes it a little bit more personal. It feels like you're a part of the experience rather than watching someone's restream of the E3 or watching the official E3. You're watching Nintendo's straight. That's why, you know, it's direct. It's direct to you. And I think PlayStation has kind of done that a few times with their PlayStation Experience.
Well, they've got a new thing, too, called... I'll find that here in a second.
State of Play.
State of Play, that's it, yeah. They're trying.
So with their so they're kind of following in that kind of space. And thinking about it this way, like, who do we care the most about if the PS5 is cool? Consumers. How do we get more consumers playing the PS5 before release to get them hyped about it? Put them in Best Buys around the country leading up to release versus 100 journalists at E3.
Right, yeah.
Especially considering, you know, journalists are under kind of I think a lot of scrutiny right now. A lot of people are not trusting news and journalists in this day and age because of misinformation, lying, people just straight up not knowing what they're doing and things like that. So should I watch E3 or should I go to Best Buy and play the PS5 for myself? I think they're taking a risk, but I think it could pay off.
Now, the other thing that I have heard a lot of journalists say is that they don't want to go to E3. For one, it's super crowded. All of the things that you have to do have to be done by appointment. And with that ESA leak where they just put out people's information, a lot of people got harassed. A lot of people were targeted. So many of those journalists are like, I don't trust the ESA, period. I'm not going. And honestly, That's, if I had the opportunity to go to E3 this year, you know, I would think about it. But there's the other part of me that would also think real hard about that side of it. And, you know, is it worth it for me to spend that time when something like PAX might be a lot more fruitful of my efforts and time?
You know, if they did, like, say if they did the Best Buy idea, I, as a journalist for Miners Rock or for Forever Classic Games, could go and still experience the PS5 alongside consumers and write an article about it. And then, I don't know.
I think we'll see something like that.
It wouldn't surprise me, but at the same time, who knows?
I think more likely we're going to get like a PlayStation Experience type of thing where they set up all their own stuff, they make this production or, you know, whatever they have to do. But I think the wave is building for PS5 because all the information we have has come through like Wired or Engadget or something, right? These interviews, these private meetings, but some sort of marketing something or other is going to break here soon. And that when that flood hits, I think it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Zach, where do you sit with E3 and Sony?
I kind of like that Sony's not doing E3, kind of like y'all were talking about a little bit ago, because it could potentially open up the door for more things, or E3 could just kind of like cease and it turn into some other stuff, which might be cool at this point.
You already have so many developers kind of doing their own thing in the same area at the same time as E3. Like, people like Devolver Digital, who specifically were kind of turned away at the door, were like, all right, hell with you, we're going to go across the street and make something cool. And they did.
Yeah.
And consistently, they've been really fun to watch.
Yeah, they're weird, but I do love the fact that they, like, aren't at E3 itself, but they're like, fuck E3, come over here.
Yeah. EA did something similar. They had a thing right before E3 in the general area. So I think we'll always have some sort of West Coast summertime event for gaming. I just don't know if E3 as it stands is going to be the same in 3 or 4 years. It might turn into more of a festival where there are multiple events kind of crowded around in a week or something.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Either way, we're going to get some killer news from PlayStation here soon. That is coming. And I think February, March is a great time for it. I would be surprised if they held back their stuff until this summer.
Yeah, no, they definitely, well, they want to build the hype and they want to give people enough time to have the money to plan for buying day one, you know?
Yeah. Now, of the 2 new consoles coming, which are you guys more excited for?
I have never had any interest in any Xbox console ever.
I'm not overly interested. I mean, if it ends up being something like unbelievably mind-blowing, and has some sort of something where I can play all my stuff back and forth with the console and PC still, like just I want more than's going on currently, but I don't know what yet, then I might be more interested in it than I am, which is pretty not that high up on my list of things. But I'm interested in the PS5. Mostly because they got their head out of their ass about crossplay. They could have given me the most powerful machine ever, and if they were like, no crossplay, then I'd have been like, no PlayStation.
For me, it comes to a lot, like, I have a PlayStation 4, I have a Switch, and I have PC. And there are a number of games on each of those things that are exclusive to those systems. And those are games that I enjoy immensely. Xbox has yet to release any game exclusively that I've ever cared enough about to want a console. And if there is one, it would be like, if one game isn't enough at this point, when I have multiple series on other consoles exclusive to those that I want to play.
And usually if it's a multi-platform thing, it performs better on PlayStation. That's my problem with the Xbox, is it consistently just doesn't perform well, even at the UI state. So if we were to get a console that has that like super snappy UI, everything makes sense. You know, you can get a hold of your friends, you can jump in, you can play quick. Game Pass I freaking love. I think it's the best deal in gaming currently, but it is going to take that killer app like Halo, which thankfully it's supposedly launching alongside Halo, to really push the Xbox. Now granted, every other franchise that I have interest in primarily hang out on PlayStation. So for me, between the two, PS5 is the way I'm going to go. If PlayStation says we are going to allow you to play the PS1, the PS2, the PS3 digital stuff that you have on your Sony account, plus physical PS4, plus physical PS5 and digital PS5, I am buying it day one because I absolutely adore the PlayStation ecosystem when it comes to the digital titles. But as of now, I can only play those on my Vita and my PS3. If that carried over to PS5, I'm getting it day one.
Yeah, I would probably, maybe not day one, but I would definitely be getting that thing much sooner than I waited to get another.
And you know, maybe my opinion might be different if I didn't have a decent PC to play games on. But anything on Xbox, because it's a Windows or it's a Microsoft-based thing, a lot of their stuff eventually makes it to Windows. And so I eventually get access to all of that stuff as well.
I think Xbox are going to move out of having like exclusives and stuff and just having good quality games that they release elsewhere. Because we've even seen Xbox release some of their titles on Switch. So I think that they're really more concerned with the infrastructure and building the IPs, acquiring studios. They've acquired many studios recently. So I think Xbox are building for something cool. I'm worried about the initial launch, and I don't think it's going to even come close to PS5's sales numbers.
We'll see though, because Xbox is still pretty insanely popular, particularly for fans of like their competitive multiplayer shooters and things like that. So that is definitely the space for those. And I think considering how consistently well the Call of Duty and the Battlefield games sell.
Funny you mentioned those. Most of those players have shifted to PS4. Primarily, your player base are on those consoles.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that player shift. For forever, it was always Xbox because the controller was better. I don't know. I never understood that, but
yeah. That was a recent. I couldn't get you the numbers if I tried right now.
Someone tried to argue with me that the controller was. They're like, Joe, the PlayStation is like for nerds because the controller is built for like nerd games, but the Xbox controller, the way it's the joysticks are positioned, is for like real competitive shooter games. And I was like, they both have 2 joysticks. What are you talking about?
It's just a matter of preference. But no, that was definitely the case for 360 because like the infrastructure for online was so piss poor on PlayStation, and because PlayStation really didn't do much for it. So that's where you get into situations where like, well, Xbox Live, even though you have to pay for it, is a better service.
Also, I like movies, and the PS4 playing Blu-ray definitely made it a better buy for me.
That's why most people picked up the PS3, and that's going to be be the case with the PS5. It plays Ultra Blu-rays. So once again, we have a living room centered console that will just dominate as long as the price is right. If they get anywhere near $600, I don't think it's going to work. But if they keep it under $5, it'll be fine, I think.
I don't think it'll be a day one purchase, considering my current financial projections or the way, if things stay the way they are, no way. I have one of my goals this year is to buy a new PC. And so that's going to take up a lot of my extra money this year because this thing is like 8 years old and it's had a few recent upgrades to keep it going and relevant to where things are at and with my work. But I'm going to have to do something within the next year, I think, to really like get something that's going to be a little bit more long term for me. And then I can start thinking about other consoles. And that's if I can convince my wife it's a good idea.
PS5 is pretty cool. I always kind of want to see Nintendo put out a really high-end Switch, but as far as what I've played primarily on, PS4 has dominated my gaming time. It's such a solid console. I would probably be
more interested in a Pro Switch than I would be a PS5.
Makes sense.
For me, I've just always been like, I loved the GBA, like Game Boy Color, GBA, the DS, 3DS. I've always had a portable system. I like portable gaming.
Me too,
man. I don't like mobile gaming.
No, that's different. Just because it is gaming that is portable, it is not portable gaming. Mobile gaming has never interested me.
I've almost always had some sort of portable gaming device, and I've used it quite often. I like lounging in a recliner with the Switch and playing it.
Now that said, I really like being able to remote play to my phone and put like a little rig on my controller. That way I can like hold my phone with the controller. That's a really cool feeling. I love doing that little like stream to play Monster Hunter or something. That's pretty cool.
I did that recently. I think my tablet finally got the update needed to remote play, because the biggest problem, I could remote play, but it wasn't compatible with the DualShock 4. Now I think it finally is, and I can do that. I tried it with my phone for Horizon, but I didn't have a good place to put my phone, so I kind of had it propped weirdly on my hands on top of the controller, and anytime action the phone would just fall off my hands, and I'd be like, oh.
You got to get those little clips or a desk stand or something. Yeah, it's cool. I think streaming is something I will never do as my main way of play, because I'm such a sucker for, like, physical media and the art of it and all that, like the process of picking a game and all that. But a supplementary way to enjoy my games, I like the idea of game streaming. Just things like Stadia are not a great place for me right now.
One thing that I did try, as soon as my phone got the update sooner than my tablet. As soon as my phone was able to do it, what I did was I remote played to my phone, and then I Chromecasted my phone to my TV in the bedroom just to see. And the experience was better than I thought it would be.
There you go. There's going to be some interesting things. So really, that's kind of it for PlayStation. I mean, I've got a sharp eye on what they're doing. But for now, I don't know about E3. But hey, Zach, what have you been playing here recently, man? What's Jimmy and your jammies?
Like I said earlier, still some 7 Days to Die. I'm working on getting into whatever else I can.
He's moving into a house. He don't got time for games.
Well, yeah, but I mean, have you seen some cool movies? It'd be anything that you're just interested in.
I mean, The Witcher was killer.
Yeah, I'm almost done with it. I have like an episode.
Yeah, no, The Witcher was killer. Henry Cavill is a fantastic Geralt, and we watched an interview with him, and I don't remember whose talk show he was on, but
he's
guy
clearly a fan.
Yeah, he apparently was like calling his agent, every couple days of the week, like, hey, did you hear anything else on that Witcher project yet? Hey, did you hear anything else on that yet? Hey. So he like really forward heavy, and he was talking to this talk show guy. And the guy's like, oh, this and that and games, and like the guy had no idea what was going on. He was like, I just picture somebody like super fat and sweats, like Funyuns and Mountain Dew, and Henry Cavill's like, well, I'm not fat. He's like, but sweats are comfy. He's like, and I'll eat some fucking Funyuns and drink some Mountain Dew and play games in the corner. So the guy's like, what? Yeah, no, but it was great. No, it's awesome. That's probably the most exciting thing I've hit. And then couple people have told me good things about
1917.
1917, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard good things about that one too.
So what I like about The Witcher is it's gotten so many people interested in the games and stuff. For players on Steam, it's the most players they've ever had.
Yeah, even higher than when it first came out.
It's crazy to think about. I wonder what the book sales have been like too.
And that's only on Steam. That's not counting console or the fact that a lot of new people just got it on the Switch.
Right, yeah.
True. And Tanner was telling me something about the books. I don't know how accurate it is, but he was really excited. He said they hadn't been in English print for a while.
They were printed at some point in the 90s, I thought. A lot of them are getting reprinted, though, I think. Because I've got some of the ones after the games got popular that have, like, the video game art style on them.
Right.
They're decent books. I've read the first 2 or 3.
Yeah, Tanner just finished the first one, and he left it with us so that we can read it.
It's on my to-read list. It's in my pile.
Yeah, a lot of the things that happen in the show do come from that book, but that book is like a collection of short stories that is also kind of shuffled around, so you're not getting a chronological story, so to speak. Right. You're getting like pieces of it.
That was my gathering of it. That's why I didn't mind the kind of episodic nature of it, because I know people were expecting this kind of like grand Game of Thrones-esque kind of long-form story, and I'm like, well, if it's based off the first book is short story, so it's a bit episodic anyway, where it's a kind of is like a Monster of the Week format in novel form.
Yeah, and the game specifically didn't feel that great to me when I played it, because I think I own it on the Xbox. It was one of the first games I got for it. But I never played longer than 2 or 3 hours, because it just doesn't feel right to me. So, mileage may vary. Going back to it now, it's going to feel a little different, obviously.
I would say keep going. Its weakest point for me was, in fact, like the combat. It's a little bit on the clunky side. Like, they tried to do an Arkham Knight, or like an Arkham Asylum kind of like combat style, and just didn't quite get it right. But it is some of the best writing in a video game you'll ever experience. They took a lot of time to delicately write some really intriguing stories, and the side quests are some of the best, most engaging side quests I've ever seen in a video game ever. Like, they spent just as much attention on some of these side stories as they did on the main plot.
Yeah, you could definitely, I could tell that even early on.
And that's important. You gotta have that.
Yeah. So that's what's really interesting you currently, Zach. Anything else?
That's it.
Joe, what's getting you all riled up over there?
I started playing Far Cry 5 with my friend last night, actually. It is a riot of a time. Him and I have different approaches. I think I was telling you about this earlier. He always likes to like evaluate the situation and sneak in and get those stealth. And I'm kind of like, I'm going to drive this truck straight into the middle of their compound and hopefully run a few of them over while I'm at it. At one point, I was standing on top of a plane. He was driving and dropping grenades down on top of this cult. So that was fun. No, it's just a good time. He's a friend that I really like to play cooperative games with, and it's got a really strong cooperative element in the multiplayer. So it's kind of this like open world build. So it's got this huge open world. You can kind of just go wherever and do whatever you want. But they added multiplayer, and it works really well. So I really like that aspect to it. The story seems of any Far Cry game seems like the one it actually intrigues me. I haven't really cared about Far Cry in the past, but this one has a really strong like True Detective Season 1 vibe to it.
Yeah.
And so I really like that angle, and I'm really enjoying that. I haven't started it yet, but I'm going to soon. I got a review copy of a game called The Longing, which kind of has this kind of 80s horror children's novel art style to it. Think about like scary stories for kids from the 80s, and that's kind of the art style I think of.
Yeah.
But you're like down in this cave, this mysterious cave, and you have this timer at the top, and you're in this cave for 400 days. And the timer counts down in real time.
Oh, so this is like we were talking about the other day.
Yes.
Cool.
And so you'll get to a part where it'll say like, oh, I want to jump down here, but I want to make sure it's safe. The moss down there should be grown large enough to make it safe in 2 weeks. And so then you wait for 2 weeks in game. I don't know if the timer continues outside of game yet, or if you literally just leave the game open for 2 weeks. But you can also choose to just, right there in the trailer where he's in the pit, there's water dripping down. It takes about a month for that pit to fill with water, and then you can swim across.
Right. So this is interesting because of that time element, and it is like a point and click kind of adventure game, yeah?
I don't know. I don't know any of the gameplay mechanics. You have this little room that you can spend time in, and you can just straight up read the entirety of books.
Okay.
Like, so there's like, you saw in the trailer, there's a book by Edgar Allan Poe. It's the entire book. You can just sit and read all of Moby Dick in real time in game to spend the time waiting.
It's such a weird idea.
But it's fascinating. No one's ever. So I'm really interested in trying it out. The game comes out in March, and they gave me the review code now, and I will only have been 60 days in out of the 400.
It'll be interesting to see how that time element really starts to come into play.
Yeah, that's the thing, as I don't know exactly how real time the timer is. I do have some permissions to stream it on occasion. They don't want me streaming everything, but they said that some hands-on, pre-hands-on experience and streaming is allowed leading up to release, as long as I am intending to write a written review of my experience. So
nice.
I also have to be careful not to like spoil any like major events in the game. So, but you if you're watching it, I don't know if you can speed up time or not, but if you're watching the trailer, it seems like that countdown goes down 1 second at a time.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So here's one that I'm going to recommend. So as far as the games and stuff I've played have been pretty usual. You know, I spent some time with ARMS the other day. I've put a little bit more time into the Mighty Switch Force collection. System Shock 2 is something I'm still grinding on, and Mass Builder as well. But I think the thing that has really kind of struck me as being really interesting is this particular OVA series for Gundam based on a manga that was really popular called Gundam Thunderbolt. Now, I kind of want you guys to actually watch this trailer with me because I want you to hear the music specifically. So there's a subgenre of jazz, and I don't know what it's called, but it's that like constant solo, always doing something, piano and drums just kind of going haywire. And that soundtrack is pivotal to this story. You have a character who absolutely loves that type of jazz and will listen to that while they're in their mobile suit. And then you have another character that listens to a different type of jazz in the opposing Zaku force. And there's a lot of just like really cool stories about like loss, the loss of limbs, the loss of friends, and it's all kind of played with this like almost Cowboy Bebop style situation, and it's really, really cool. The first movie's only an hour and a half long, maybe 2 hours, but it like combines the 8-episode OVA into a single film, and that's a really, really cool way to experience this. I don't necessarily recommend watching the next movie because it ends on a cliffhanger, but Gundam Thunderbolt is cool stuff. And me being a drummer, I just absolutely adore some of the percussiveness to not only the music, but a lot of the actions in the show.
I might actually have to check that one out. I've never really been a Gundam guy, or even like a big robots guy in general. So I never got into Transformers. I never got into Gundam. But this seems like they took a different approach to it and kind of tried to mix up the formula enough that it might be interesting. The one exception is I really enjoyed Evangelion.
Oh, Evangelion's great. But this in particular, I think, is one of the more unique pieces of Gundam, that because I've been watching lots of Gundam, just all these different series, all the different OVAs. I started up the movie version of the original series, which is kind of interesting. But this in particular struck me as like, this is a good thing for me to recommend to other people that don't necessarily like Gundam. And it does take place in the Universal Century timeline, so if you're interested, it's got those elements. They're just not very important. It's a lot of like personal level stories rather than some of the grander political stuff. Although you do get flavors of that. It's cool. I recommend checking it out. Like I said, you can find it in both in sub and dub, but it's about an hour and a half long. I'm going to try to find the manga. I saw it recently at a local bookstore and didn't pick it up for whatever reason, so I might have to go get that. Well, guys, unless you have something in particular you want to point out, that about does it for me on today's episode of the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's like hitting midnight for me, so it's but yeah.
It's real late here.
Yeah, you especially. Well, guys, thank you very much for listening to today's episode of the podcast. If people wanted to find you, Zach, where might they do that?
Anywhere. I'll be everywhere as Exquisite Liar.
Right on. All of this is in the show notes, of course. Joe, what about you?
Mm-hmm. You can find me on Twitter at TheDaddyGamer, Twitch DaddyGamerYT, or YouTube DaddyGamer Reviews are the best ways to find me. And on Daddy Gamer Reviews on YouTube is the new episode with Untitled Goose Game, so go check it out.
That's a fun one. I recommend people check that out. But you can find me at the number 4 Forever Classic 105 on Twitter. Our link to the Discord is available on our show notes. You've got twitch.tv/Forever Classic Games here, which you can watch us record these episodes live, as well as some other gaming content. And, of course, there is the Forever Classic Games website, which has all of that and more, as far as our like written reviews, some of the video stuff we do, everything.
And if there's anything in particular you want us to take a look at or talk about, shoot us an email at the foreverclassicpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah. And we have gotten a couple really cool emails in the past. I'm glad that that's something that we set up.
All right. Well, I think that's about it.
Thank you all for listening to the podcast. As always, stay cool.